Hello all. Today in the session for natural language processing we would be discussing on these two topics. I would like to introduce one important application of NLP, which is sentimental analysis, and after that we are going to see how do we work with NLP datasets. When I talk about sentiment analysis in natural language processing is basically the process of determining the sentiment or opinion expressed in the piece of text. When I talk about sentiment, usually we talk about whether the sentiment classifying the block of text, if the text is positive, negative or neutral. So this the sentiment analysis is a fundamental task in NLP which is used for various applications that we have already discussed in the previous sessions. When I talk about applications in social media monitoring, in customer feedback analysis, market research, in all these applications they will be using sentimental analysis. Okay, so we have various techniques ranging from rule based to machine learning approaches which we use for working on with this particular application, which is called as sentimental analysis. Overall, basically sentimental analysis is a versatile and widely used NLP task with applications across various industries, including marketing, customer service, finance and healthcare. Okay, so when I talk about the sentimental analysis, there are few things that comes into picture, which is all about whether the sentiment analysis comes into regression or classification application of machine learning. There are few applications of sentimental analysis in classification and few in regression. So let us see them in detail. So in machine learning, basically classification is all about categorizing something into set of predefined or discrete categories, right? So when I talk about sentimental analysis with regards to classification, we have to look into polarity. Okay, so polarity is nothing but a task of sentimental analysis with respect to classification. So this polarity will express the opinion whether it is positive, negative or neutral. Okay, so classification of polarity is one type of, we call this particular task as sentence classification task. I am performing classification on the sentence to tell if the sentence is positive, negative or neutral. Okay, now another type of sentence classification task other than this is spam filtering, as I told you. So when I talk about spam filtering, I say when I receive the mail it is spam or not spam. So this particular things comes under binary classification, but there are other examples. If you have more than 2 classes, they comes under multi-class classification. Okay, so depending upon the task we take up, the sentimental analysis may fall under binary classification or multi-class classification. Okay, now in contrast to classification, we also have the prediction of continuous values. Instead of discrete in classification, we have prediction of continuous values, which is called as regression. For example, prediction of the price based on property, based on the properties of the house, prediction of stock price based on the information, collecting the news from news article. Even this falls under the sentiment analysis task, because we are looking at the social media posts, whether they are good post or bad post, differentiating them, good stock market, whether the stock market is increasing, decreasing or neutral, whether it's good, bad or neutral, all that stuff. Okay, but most of the cases in linguistic, when I talk about NLP, as told you, we'll be talking about we'll take linguistics into picture. So when you do that, characters, words and parts of speech also comes into picture, which are mostly discrete. So for this reason, we say most of the uses of machine learning in NLP falls under classification but not regression. Most of the sentiment analysis task or NLP task comes under classification. Okay, now this is the basic pipeline for sentimental analysis. For example, this is the ever. Okay, this is the sentence that I am using. So I want to process this sentence and give my opinion or what exactly the sentence means. Okay, so what we actually do is we'll be taking one type of neural network to process this sentence, and then we divide this sentence into something called as word embeddings, which we'll be discussing in the next session. So we take this sentence as input, process that input to through the linear layers and then derive the output. So here I have categorized the 5 different classifications of output, saying strongly positive, positive, neutral, negative, strongly negative. So depending upon the word embeddings, depending upon how my neural network process this particular statement, I will be getting one of the sentiments from the given statement as output. Okay, this is the pipeline. Next, when you look into the steps involved, it is more or less like how we process other algorithms like machine learning and deep learning. How did we process other algorithms? It is the same thing. First thing is data acquisition, collecting your data, text pre-processing, and then feature extraction from that particular data, feature selection and extraction, wherein we consider words and word embeddings here, which I am going to discuss in the next session. And then we perform this task, sentiment classification, from the words or word embeddings that have been generated. After that, depending upon the sentiments classification, I will go for polarity detection, and then finally I will go for validation and evaluation. Okay, so these are different steps that are involved in sentiment analysis classification. Okay, now where do we actually use this? There are n number of applications of sentiment analysis in brand monitoring. If suppose, see, all of us shop on e-commerce sites based on feedback, right? Based on the feedbacks of the customer who has already purchased the product. Okay, so brand monitoring, customer surveys, finance and stock monitoring, business intelligence build up, enhancing the customer experience, market research and analysis. So all these are different applications where we'll be using sentiment analysis. Next, not just applications, when we are working on something, we also have to look into challenges that are actually that actually comes into picture when we work on text data or voice data. Okay, when I talk about voice data, probably we may not face any challenges, but when we look into the text data of a human language, okay, there are some challenges faced. Let's look into them. Subjectivity and tone. If I am angry, if I want to convey something, when I am angry, the tone, the sentence may be simple, but the tone might be different. So as a human, we can understand that, but it is different for a computer to understand the tone and polarity of that particular sentence if it is in the form of a text. Okay, content and polarity, subjectivity and tone, content and polarity, irony and sarcasm also cannot be identified in a text. Comparisons of various things can also be not understood. Emojis are not in the form of text, which will not be identified. Defining neutrality, okay, I am just okay. So all these kind of statements will be difficult for computer to process. So that is another challenging task. Human annotator accuracy. Okay, so these are different challenges that we come across when we process the human language text data using our NLP models. Okay, now many NLP applications are developed using supervised machine learning algorithms, where basically the algorithms are trained from the data with desired outcomes instead of using handwritten rules. Okay, now when we talk about data set, okay, all of us know what is data set because we have worked with machine learning and deep learning algorithms. All of us know what is data set, but when it comes to NLP, we look into what data set exactly refers to in the context of natural language processing. Okay, so a data set simply means collection of data. It consists of pieces of data that follows the same format. We all of us know that, but in NLP, records in a data set. Okay, we talk about this, we usually use this word record. Okay, so record in a data set are usually some types of linguistic units. Okay, such as when I talk about linguistic units, we refer them to as words, sentences or documents. Okay, so basically this is very important to us. Okay, the data set of natural language texts is called as corpus, or we call it as corpora. Okay, this is very important. The data set of human language text is called as corpus or corpora. Okay, so as an example, when we think about spam filtering, email spam filtering, okay, each record represents piece of text and a label corresponding to that. Okay, so where text is a sentence and the label specifies whether the text is spam or not. If I receive 10 mails, I have this numbering, right, 1 2 3 4. So that text data is called as a sentence, and then spam or inbox, this is called as label. Okay, so record is collection of text and label. text gives you the information, label gives you the content of that particular information. In spam filtering, it is spam, not spam. Text is the email message that I have received. Okay. Now, some NLP data sets and corpora have complex structures. When we talk about languages, English language is simple when you compare to Bengali, Malayalam or some other Indian languages, right? So when I talk about language, human language, there are many human languages which are being used across the world. So not every language is easy. So we have to go through complex structures of that particular data also. So for example, a data set may contain a collection of sentences where each sentence is annotated with detailed linguistic information such as parts of speech tags, parse trees, dependency structures, semantic roles and all that stuff. So in this case, the data set look complex. Okay, so if a data set contains all this collection of annotated elements with parts, trees and all this stuff, we call that as tree bank. Okay, simple text data, we call it as simple text data set, we call it as corpus. If you have the data set with all these annotations, we call that as tree bank. Okay, so the most famous tree bank, as I told you in my previous sessions, it is called as Penn Tree Bank PTB, which has been serving as the de facto standard data set for most of the NLP tasks. When you talk about parts of speech tagging or parsing or anything or any of the tasks, we will be using Penn Tree Bank data set, which has all these annotations described in it. Okay. Now, when you talk about the data set or NLP data set, okay, so basically we'll have a record which we usually call it as instance in machine learning, right? So in machine learning we always come across instance which represents one particular data or field value, okay. So that is one basic unit or for which the prediction is made, right? Now the instance actually is usually recorded from a record in a data set in case of NLP. Okay, so in conclusion, label is a piece of information attached to linguistic unit in a data set, and text is actually that particular data. Okay, now let's see the structure. As you can see, this is the data set. Okay, I have record and I have fields for that particular record. When I take one record into consideration, I have the information which I called it as instance, and for that information I have label associated with that particular text data. Okay, so these are different records. If I take 5 emails, I will have 5 records, and for each record I have label and that particular text. Okay, so this is how the data sets are arranged in NLP. So just remember, we have 2 words when I talk about data set: corpus, tree bank. Corpus, the simple text data. The complex text data with annotations include is called as tree bank. Okay, so this is the structure of your basic NLP data set. Okay, so I think all of you have understood what is sentimental analysis and what NLP data set looks like and what it is addressed as. Thank you.